how fast can you say the word disbarred? Just how does a district attorney manage to completely torpedo not just one, but multiple high-profile cases and end up getting disbarred faster than you can say mistrial? Well, meet Linda Stanley, the prosecutor who turned a straightforward murder case into a full-blown legal dumpster fire. Stanley's overzealous, reckless, and frankly amateurish behavior didn't just hurt her career, it obliterated it. We're talking about blatant ethical breaches, wild goose chases after judges, and PR stunts that would make even the most shameless attention seekers cringe. You might think I'm exaggerating, but trust me, what went down in Colorado's 11th Judicial District is the kind of legal catastrophe that makes seasoned attorneys shake their head in disbelief. From giving press conferences that sounded more like reality show auditions to making extrajudicial statements that would make any defense attorney's dream come true. Stanley seemed determined to make every mistake in the prosecutor's handbook. Today, we're dissecting a colossal blunder of a self-destructive district attorney. We're breaking down every disastrous decision, every ethical pitfall, and how Stanley's antics led to her own disbarment. That's right, this isn't just about a case going sideways, it's about how the top prosecutor became the poster child for what not to do. Let's dig into how Linda Stanley single-handedly dismantled her legal career one absurd decision at a time. So imagine that you're the prosecutor and you're working on a relatively high-profile murder case. You might think the last thing you want to do is blab about it to the media, right? Well, prosecutor Linda Stanley thought about it otherwise, and boy oh boy did it come back to bite her. Stanley started off with a bang by calling a press conference the very day the suspect, Barry Morphew, was arrested for his wife's murder. But rather than delivering a few restrained, legally sound comments, she opened her mouth and spilled out a little too much. A journalist asked if Morphew had been cooperating during questioning, and what did the prosecutor say? She said, quote, "When asked questions, he said he wanted a lawyer," and all questioning ended. Now, seriously, did she not get the memo about Miranda rights? Because commenting about a suspect's post-arrest silence is the kind of prejudice that could taint potential jurors and get her slapped with a gag order, which is exactly what happened. But it didn't stop there. Stanley seemed incapable of keeping quiet, like she was auditioning for a role in Loose Lips, in some sort of bad courtroom drama. She went on to give multiple interviews, effectively portraying Morphew as the guy in the public eyes who was guilty before the trial even began. Her comments were so problematic that they became the basis for a judicial ruling to move the trial out of its original county. Think about it. The district attorney's own blabbermouth actions forced a change of venue because the judges decided that her own comments tainted the jury pool. Now, that's not just a mistake, that's legal malpractice. But if you think it's bad, you haven't seen anything yet. Because if there's one thing worse than a DA who can't stop talking, it's a DA who can't manage the evidence worth a damn. Now, handling evidence is typically Prosecutor 101. You don't need to be Perry Mason to know that messing up discovery is like signing your case's own death warrant. So what did Stanley do? She botched it so badly, it almost makes you wonder if she understood the rules at all. Now, imagine receiving a 10 terabyte external hard drive filled with case evidence and thinking, yeah, we'll just hand this over to the defense without organizing anything. And that's exactly what Stanley's office did. It was like dumping a massive unsorted pile of jigsaw pieces on the defense desk and saying, good luck. Now, judges don't look kindly on that sort of thing. Go figure. Prosecutor Stanley's mismanagement of discovery wasn't just sloppy, it was catastrophic. Entire chunks of evidence were delayed, incomplete, or straight up missing. The result? Multiple judicial sanctions, critical evidence being thrown out in trial, and the defense having more ammunition than they knew what to do with. And Prosecutor Stanley's response to the disaster? She didn't seem to care. When the court started to issue warnings and even sanctions, the prosecutor shrugged it off as if she was being scolded for not doing her own homework. And let's not forget her stellar supervision skills, because as the prosecutor, she has to supervise her staff. And despite having experienced deputies like Jeffrey Lindsay and Mark Hulbert at her disposal, Stanley couldn't, or wouldn't, provide the guidance needed to keep the case on track. Now, it's one thing to make a mistake, it's another to dig in your heels and refuse to fix it. Her own team described the office as chaotic and dysfunctional. One deputy even quit over the lack of support and structure, leaving Stanley sinking ship for calmer waters. Now, if you thought she'd stop digging her own grave at the Discovery fiasco stage, think again. Because next up is Stanley's idea of conflict resolution, investigating the judge. Yeah, you heard that right. Apparently, if the judge rules against you, the mature response is not to make better legal arguments, because that's not what Linda Stanley did. No, she decided that when the judge wasn't on her side, it must be corruption, and it was time to launch a personal investigation into the judge's past. After a series of unfavorable rulings, Prosecutor Stanley, in a fit of paranoia that would make even conspiracy theories raise an eyebrow, decided to target the presiding judge, Patrick Murphy. She directed her chief investigator to dig into Murphy's personal life and even interview the judge's ex-spouse. Why? Well, apparently it was to see if she could dig up some dirt on him that might force him to recuse himself from the case. Now, let's be clear here. This is a level of pettiness and recklessness that borders on sabotage. Not only did the stunt fail spectacularly, the judge's ex-spouse had nothing incriminating to say, but it also painted Stanley as a prosecutor willing to bend the rules to get her way. Any defense attorney worth their salt would use that to discredit the entire prosecution, and rightfully so. Judges are supposed to be neutral arbiters, not collateral damage in a prosecutor's war on the defendant. But even after shooting herself in the foot by going after the judge personally, Prosecutor Stanley still wasn't done. Because why would you quit when you're behind? Why not also make a fool of yourself on social media too? Now, if you're the prosecutor, staying off social media while handling a high-profile case should be a relative no-brainer, right? Well, apparently not for Prosecutor Linda Stanley. She decided that going toe-to-toe with YouTube commenters was a better use of her time than preparing for her case. You just can't make this up. Stanley jumped on YouTube and responded to comments on a channel called Profiling Evil, where she had already made some ethically questionable statements about the case. When viewers criticized her conduct and expressed doubts about her handling of the evidence, did she take the high road? Nope. She fired back with snarky, unprofessional responses in the comment section that only added more fuel to the fire. One commenter dared to suggest that the case was weak without a body or DNA evidence. The prosecutor was having none of it, and she shot back by citing a completely unrelated case and sarcastically questioning the commenter's knowledge of criminal law. Not exactly the most promising behavior you'd expect from your elected district attorney. This wasn't just unprofessional, it was downright damaging to her credibility. She turned what should have been a fairly orderly prosecution into a public spectacle, making herself a bully instead of a legal professional. And it wasn't just on YouTube where she thought that she'd like, comment, and subscribe. Stanley even reached out to other true crime podcasters like Jules Wolf through private messages that became public fodder. At this point, she was practically handing the defense gifts wrapped in a bow, multiple statements outside of court that were prejudicial, inflammatory, and in some cases, outright false. The court took notice, and the damage to the prosecution's case was irreparable. Now, you might think that Prosecutor Stanley would learn to stay away from the limelight, but no, oh no, she kept pushing the boundaries until she forced the court's hand. And the final result, the entire case imploded. By now, you're probably wondering, how does it all end? Well, Stanley's downfall wasn't a gentle descent, it was a plummet off the legal cliff. After all the antics, missteps, and outright violations, the court dismissed the charges against Barry Morphew without prejudice thanks to Stanley's reckless behavior. So she managed to make her case disappear due to her own misconduct. But that wasn't even the worst part. Her misconduct was so egregious, it led to outright dismissal of 2 other cases, including one involving the death of a 10-month-old baby. Judges ruled that her comments and conduct amounted to such extreme judicial misconduct, the only remedy was to throw out these criminal cases entirely. That's not just embarrassing, it's tragic. The Supreme Court's disciplinary board couldn't have been any clearer. Prosecutor Stanley showed a complete disregard for the rules and a fundamental misunderstanding of what it means to be a prosecutor. The Supreme Court's decision? Disbarment. Linda Stanley's case is a case not only of a cautionary tale, but rather a masterclass in how not to be a prosecutor. She didn't just stumble, she swan dived headfirst into ethical quicksand and dragged her entire office down with her, not to mention the forced dismissal of a couple criminal cases involving murders. This isn't the kind of blunder that you can bounce back from. It's the kind that gets your career put on a permanent timeout. But hey, enough from me. What do you think about this legal catastrophe? Here's a couple questions for you to answer in our comment section, unless you're a prosecutor, in which case I suggest maybe not commenting so much. Question 1. Should Stanley's disbarment be seen as a fitting end to her legal rampage, or should we all start printing those free Linda t-shirts? Number 2. Was going after Judge Murphy a power move gone horribly wrong, or was it the world's worst attempt at getting back at the referee? And finally, how much freedom should prosecutors have to speak to the media? Should we just hand them the megaphone and let them say whatever they want? Or maybe, I don't know, get them a social media babysitter? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below, because if there's one thing this case needs, it's even more fiery discussion in the comment section. Until next time, I've been Uncivil Law, and remember to keep it uncivil out there.